cleanup. And it will be better for him because he will get to hear all of the comments which would have been made previously. And if there's anything that we are in error about, he'll have opportunity to correct us. And if there's anything that we don't know about yet, he will have the opportunity to share it with us. And then we will open the floor for questions and answers. And so I look forward now for us having a very enlightening evening. And if I could invite the audio booth to put up the slides for me. Thank you very much. While they're doing that, let me start by saying again that what we're looking at this evening is the Commercial Enterprises Bill. This bill has generated quite a bit of commentary, we could even say controversy, to the extent that the bill has already been passed by both houses of Parliament. It's been passed in the House of Assembly, it's been passed in the Senate, and it's still generating significant public commentary. And so we think it very fitting and appropriate that we look at this bill this evening. I'm going to need some help from the rear because I do not have a clicker, or if there is a clicker, if I could be provided with one. Okay, so let's look firstly then at the objects and reasons for the bill. Now this is lifted directly from the bill itself that was presented to the House of Assembly. This bill seeks to liberalize the granting of work permits to an enterprise that wishes to establish itself in the Bahamas and requires work permits for its management, thank you, team and key personnel. Now, if you have no idea about what this bill is about, the objects gives you a clue as to what is generating the commentary. In our environment, anytime you talk about work permits or liberalizing work permits, it immediately gets people's attention, and sometimes not necessarily positively. So the bill is clearly doing something that is outside of the norm of maybe what we've been used to in the past. And so it seeks to liberalize the granting of work permits and to establish it, and for enterprises that wishes to establish itself in the Bahamas and to get work permits for management and key personnel. It is a bill for an act for the designation of specified commercial enterprises and specified commercial economic zones in the Bahamas. So, okay, let's look at what is a specified commercial enterprise. And this is taken from Section 4. Specified commercial enterprises. It's an enterprise established with an investment of not less than $250,000. Now, you note I have the original. That was the original language of the bill. It was amended, and the amended version is just below it. And it now reads, an enterprise established by a Bahamian, a non-Bahamian with an investment of not less than $250,000, or a joint venture or partnership between a Bahamian and a non-Bahamian. And the amendment is intended to point out that Bahamians can take advantage of this bill, and they do not necessarily have to meet the investment threshold of $250,000. The $250,000 investment threshold is for non-Bahamian investors, okay? So the bill is not only for the benefit of those who are not Bahamian. That's one of the first things I believe should be pointed out. Continuing on with what is a specified commercial enterprise is an enterprise that carries on any of the business undertakings or services specified in the first schedule and being approved by the investment board. A specified commercial enterprise may conduct business from any location in the Bahamas subject to zoning ordinances. The minister may by order amend the first schedule. So what will immediately come to mind is, well, what is in the first schedule? We're going to look at that shortly. It's going to be a list of all of the businesses that are eligible to take advantage of the provisions of this bill. If you have a business, or if there is a business, either locally owned or someone foreign wants to come in and invest in it, if it does not fall within the first schedule, you are not able to take advantage of the benefits that fall under this bill. Continuing on with Section 4, the minister may prescribe by regulations that any island or any part of any island is a specified commercial enterprise zone for the purpose of rationalizing infrastructural investment, efficient land use, or the encouragement of clusters of commercial development. And in essence, what that says is that if there's a particular area that the government may want to encourage these businesses to be located, the bill gives them the flexibility to designate particular areas within the Bahamas as special zones for the purpose of encouraging businesses to locate in any of those areas. Okay, so here's the first schedule. These are the types of businesses that are eligible to take advantage of this relaxation in work permit policy. Captive insurance, reinsurance, mutual fund administration, arbitration, wealth management, international trade, international arbitrage. That's just the first page. Now, I will mention that some of these businesses, there are Bahamians already in them, but some of them are not on a very large scale. And then there are some of them where the government is trying to encourage investment in those areas, either by Bahamians or by non-Bahamians. Continuing, computer programming, software design and writing, bioinformatics and analytics, maritime trade, nanotechnology, biomedical industries, boutique health facilities, data storage and warehousing, aviation approved maintenance operations, aviation registration, call centers, manufacturing or assembly of manufacturers. So that's the first schedule. We'll come back to that, I'm sure, as we continue our discussions. But again, only businesses itemized in the first schedule, as shown here, are eligible to take advantage of the provisions of this bill. And these are the types of businesses that the government is trying to encourage investment in. And some of them are areas where, for example, nanotechnology, I Googled that last night. I had no idea what that is. So there are some businesses here that I believe it's fair to say are not in the Bahamas. So we'll come back to further discuss the first schedule. So let's say there is now a business person, Bahamian or otherwise, who wants to take advantage of the provisions of this bill. They have to make an application to the investment board. And again, I'm quoting from the bill. It says as follows: any enterprise that wants to invest in the Bahamas and obtain work permits in respect of its senior management or in-house professionals may apply to the board for a specified commercial enterprise certificate. And that's important as well, because if you do not have this certificate, if the government has not approved or designated you with the certificate, you are not able to take advantage of the provisions of this bill. So you must get approved for and receive a specified commercial enterprise certificate. You must submit a business plan that specifically indicates the nature of the business, the staffing needs, including number of work permits required, and I have here in brackets, because this is a direct quotation from the bill, such training and capacity building opportunities to be afforded to Bahamians in respect of positions staffed by work permit holders. So there is a provision in the bill that is intended to encourage training and opportunities for Bahamians. Section 6, the Commercial Enterprises Facilitation Unit. There shall be established within, again, this is quoting directly from the bill, there shall be established within the board, and that's the investment board that they're referring to, a Commercial Enterprises Facilitation Unit charged with the duty on behalf of the board to receive and to efficiently consider and determine every application in a timely manner and advise the board accordingly. Now, this is significant because ordinarily investment applications from non-Bahamians go to the investment board for consideration. Generally, what they're saying here is that we're going to create a special unit. This is so important. We're going to create a special unit within the board to help to speed up and facilitate what may be ordinarily a long and bureaucratic process. And then the specified commercial enterprise certificate, which I referred to previously, it will be issued if the board, and this is the investment board, is satisfied it is for an enterprise listed in the first schedule. And we just looked at the first schedule a few moments ago. The work permits are required for an executive or manager with specialized knowledge related to the enterprise. The certificate is valid for 1 year and may be renewed or extended to such a longer period upon written application of the certificate holder, and the business plan to which the certificate relates may be varied or amended as agreed. A person who receives a certificate may freely enter the Bahamas for a period of 30 days to set up or begin the enterprise, and this is prior to issuance of the work permit. Again, this is new. Ordinarily, if you were going to establish a business, you would need to have your work permit in hand before you could enter the country and begin establishing your business. But the issuance of the certificate gives you the right to enter the country for up to 30 days prior to the issuance of the work permit and to begin work on your enterprise. Now, within 30 days of entering the country with a certificate, the person must submit a work permit application in accordance with the Immigration Act. And it says here, the director, direct quotation, shall determine any work permit applied for not later than 14 working days after the filing thereof, failing which the work permit shall be deemed, and I've underlined it and put it in bold, to have been granted pursuant to the Act, but can be revoked if reasonable grounds exist. Now, several things there are significant. There's a 14 working day time period within which to approve the work permit. Let me just say also that 14 working days is not 7 days in a week and then another 7 days. It's Monday to Friday. Those are working days. So you don't count the weekends. So it's about 3 weeks, or just under 3 weeks. But it's 14 working days. And if the work permit is not processed within that time, you will be deemed to have been granted pursuant to the Act. Now again, that is quite radical, quite different, quite out of the box from what we would have had in place and what we have in place now. So anybody else who has a different kind of business, you want to bring it into the Bahamas, etc., and you need to apply for a work permit, you can't take advantage of these provisions unless your business falls within the first schedule. If your business does not fall within the first schedule, then you have to go through the normal process of applying to the Immigration Department to get a work permit. And those of you who have applied to immigration for work permits know what all is involved in that process and how long it can take. Work permits are granted initially for 3 years, and they're renewable for a further 3 years. So that's a brief overview of the bill. It's not a long bill. I mean, it's like 4 or 5 pages. Very easy to read. And in essence, what I have shared with you is really the totality of the bill. It's not a difficult document filled with a lot of legalese. But it has generated a lot of commentary for the reasons that I stated, some of the things that I highlighted. And so, in short, here is some of the views that have been generated by the bill. And some of these I'm sure the speakers who follow me will have some thoughts on this. And then if you have questions, obviously you'll be able to ask your questions, and the minister will be able to give his comments as well. So here are some alternative views on the bill. The comment has been, you should make changes in immigration policy and better monitor the Department of Immigration rather than creating this special provision whereby something is deemed to be approved. There's concern about whether there's proper due diligence that can be done on work permit applications within a 14 working day period. What are the benefits in the bill for Bahamians? Some people have questioned whether the bill is really more geared towards generating opportunities for foreign investors. It does not fix the inefficiency at immigration that Bahamian businesses not on this schedule will have to deal with. And that's again the first schedule. If your business doesn't fall within that first schedule, you're not able to take advantage of the benefits of this bill. The investment threshold is too low. Some people said the threshold of $250,000 is too low, it should be higher. Some have thrown out $1 million, but that's been one of the comments. How many jobs will a $250,000 investment create? Not enough being done for Bahamian small businesses to make it easier to do business in the Bahamas. And creating a new unit to administer the bill without fixing the government-wide system of inefficiency, some people feel is like putting a Band-Aid on the problems that exist. So, in short, those are some of the comments, and what we want to do this evening is to have a very intellectual discussion about this. Immigration is a very emotive topic, and it can evoke strong emotion. And to the extent that it does so this evening, that's fine, but we will just want to make sure that your comments and your questions are of a kind that will further the discussion and provide good, constructive criticism, if criticism is desired, or just good, constructive comments. So thank you very much, and now we will introduce our second presenter for the evening. Mr. Lyndon Nairn. Mr. Nairn is a graduate of the College of the Bahamas and the University of St. John's in Minnesota, where he graduated with a bachelor's degree in accounting. He's a chartered manager of a real estate development company. Lyndon has been active in the community, having served as chairman of the Training Center for the Disabled and as a board member of Great Commission Ministries. He currently serves as chairman of the Bahamas Development Bank, a position he values because of its potential impact on entrepreneurship in the Bahamas. Lyndon is married to Shelley Ann Benjamin, and they have two beautiful girls, Danielle and Alexandria. This is a very brief bio that he gave me. There's much more that could be said about Mr. Nairn. He's been involved in a lot of things in the community, but he is very distinguished, and we are very pleased that he has agreed to join us on the panel. And so please help me welcome Mr. Lyndon Nairn.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As I sat listening to my brother present, and I looked out into the audience, I wondered what questions you might have immediately. And I thought that perhaps your questions might be summed up in two questions. The first being, as it relates to this bill, obviously, the first being, what were they thinking? I could see on some of your faces, what were they thinking? And perhaps the second question is, what difference does it make? What difference does this bill make? And I'm going to attempt to answer those two questions. What were they thinking? Any attempt by me to respond to that question is extremely presumptuous. It might suggest to you that I have had conversation with them, with the ministers, and quite frankly, I have not. But I believe I have an understanding of what they were thinking, and I would suggest a few things to you. I believe that principal among the things that they were thinking is the fact that the Bahamas' economy, as it exists today, is foreign direct investment dependent. That means that the Bahamas can, as it exists today, okay, as it exists today, the Bahamas cannot survive with a certain level of foreign direct investment, which over the recent years in particular has been drying up. Okay? So we need foreign direct investment, and we have not been enjoying it to the extent that we would like. So I believe they were thinking that we have to find a way to increase the amount of foreign direct investment that comes into this country. As things exist today, I believe that every reasonable person would agree that that's a reasonable objective. And I think, as they considered this whole issue of foreign direct investment, they wondered, how are we going to do it? The reality is that countries around the world are competing for foreign direct investment. Why would someone come to the Bahamas as opposed to Cayman or Bermuda or Guernsey or wherever, Ireland, Hong Kong, or the United States? Why should they come to the Bahamas? The Bahamas needs foreign direct investment. How do we distinguish ourselves? Okay, if you have a business, if you have a food store, and your competitor is next to you, why would someone patronize your business as compared to someone else's? The answer is you've got to distinguish yourself. And certainly if your competitor is doing something that you're not doing and is attracting customers that you would wish to attract, you have to up your game. And so the government considered this. And I believe that the government decided in their minds whether it was the right thing to do or not, whether it is going to achieve the results that they believe or not. I think that they were well intended. And the government said that in order to make the Bahamas more attractive, we have to deal with what we believe is a major impediment to foreign direct investment in the Bahamas. And having done their research, and we all know that a major impediment is immigration, the granting of work permits. So the government decided that given the need for foreign direct investment, the vehicle that is currently known as immigration on Hawkins Hill can serve a very useful purpose with respect to the economic development of our country. Okay? And why not use that vehicle that currently exists to drive investment into the Bahamas? And so what they decided is that they would create this bill, and they would afford to interested persons the opportunity to come into the Bahamas with the understanding that it would be smooth and easy to set up a business in the Bahamas and not have to concern oneself with waiting for 6 months or a year or 2 years or even longer for a work permit. And the reason for that, it goes right back to the principal point, that the government is seeking to provide the Bahamas with a competitive advantage. Now, the question is this: what's happening in other jurisdictions? Is this good enough? The fact of the matter is that in Cayman, for example, all of what we are seeking to do, granting a certificate, granting a work permit, you know how many days they do that in? They do that in 5 days. But in the Bahamas, we are talking about granting only the permit in 14 days. Notice the bill doesn't say anything about the certificate. Okay? That could be an indefinite period of time. So quite frankly, we are complaining about 14 days with respect to the permit, when in fact we've got a competitor that's doing the entire process in 5 days. In 5 days. The reality is that we live in a global village, and we have to distinguish ourselves. So what were they really thinking, though? This is the bottom line. The bottom line is that the government understands that it must market the Bahamas. And the government said to itself, I believe, that we can say anything to an investor. You can write anything on paper. But what would that investor believe you? Now, some people say, you know what, let's just improve immigration. Well, it's easier said than done. But let's make that assumption, though. Let's make the assumption that the government decided that it was going to improve immigration so that everybody now can get their work permits and other applications dealt with expeditiously. Let's make that assumption that they do that. And they go to a foreign investor and they say, listen, immigration, that immigration department that you were dealing with 10 years ago or even last year, that's been improved. And now you can get your work permit within 14 days. How many people do you believe will believe that? If they tell you that, would you believe that? If you were a foreign investor, would you believe that? You wouldn't believe that. So what has the government done? The government has taken a marketing idea and entrenched it in law. That's essentially what this bill is. This bill has given legislative teeth to a marketing ideal. An investor looks at the government's commitment to carry out certain tasks and says they've got to do it because it is in law. And so it strengthens the hands of those who are seeking to market the Bahamas. And so that's what they were thinking. Next question, what difference does it make? That's a fundamental question. Because I think, if I can be very candid, I think that we've been making much ado about little. What difference does it make? What is the difference between circumstances as they exist today and circumstances that will exist after this bill is introduced? Well, the fact of the matter is that today, without this bill becoming law, foreigners may come into this country, invest in all of those sectors, be granted work permits today. What difference does it make? Today, they can do that. Today. What difference does it make? The difference, the only real difference, a lot of people have been talking about the amount of the investment.